Hi there. Today I thought I'd take a quick look at automating the in-running back to lay video that I demonstrated the other day. If you haven't seen that video, there's a link at the end of this one. You can go and peruse that at your own leisure. Essentially all I was doing is pre-off time, I was looking down the graphs on the grid for anything that was consistently coming in. I then place a back bet with a view to taking that in running and trading out for a target profit. So we're going to give you the basic automation for that today. What we need to do first of all is set up a rule that will identify our runners that are coming in. So let's get this running just before the off time, so let's do 3 seconds.
10 seconds remaining
Before the event start, and we're going to stop it at the event start. Now the reason for having just a small window where this particular rule will check for runners that have shortened in price. I don't want this to run continuously after the rule has been fired, simply because you may find that it identifies 1 or 2 runners initially and then another one comes along later on which may screw up our bet placement. So I'm giving it a small time frame to check for anything that's come in. Skipping to the conditions tab, this is where we need to specify a condition using selection historic relative odds, and this is the thing that's going to do all the work as far as identifying which runners have come in. Now we don't know which runner is going to do that, so we have to check the whole of the market by using apply to all, setting our selections to all in both cases. And what we're going to do is we're going to check the selection, each runner's back price as it is now when this rule fires. Make sure it's less than its back price, let's say 3 minutes ago. And it needs to be less than, we'll say 5 ticks in this case. You'll probably want that to be a bit higher, but I'm going to use a relatively small offset for demonstration purposes and hope that we actually identify a runner as part of this process. But you generally speaking want that to be somewhat bigger. So this is the thing that's going to do the work. It's going to check its current price, make sure it's less than what the back price was minus 5 ticks 3 minutes ago. As far as the action is concerned, there's 2 things that you might want to specify. There'll be a situation where in some races you may have more than 1 runner identified, so you have the option of Dutching them. If you want to Dutch them, you can simply choose dummy in this case, and that will work quite happily. When you choose OK, however, note that you're using dummy with the apply to all, so you'll get this warning message coming up. Just choose yes for that if that's what you want to go with. Alternatively, if you want to only back the 1 runner and ignore any races where there's more than 1 selected, what you can do is change that to place a bet. And what we're going to do is place a lay bet on every runner at odds of 1.01 for a stake of 1. So that's a liability of a penny. And we're going to have no bet persistence. So in other words, this is going to be used as a control bet that's simply going to identify or be placed on each runner that is shortened in price. And we can then use that to identify races where there's only 1 of them and then subsequently place the bet on that runner. Keep in mind, however, that using this option still allows you to use Dutching as well because of the way the Dutch works, and that's what I'll set up next. Okay, so we need to put in another rule, and we'll do the Dutching option first. So even if you have one runner selected, the Dutch command will still work. It will just put the whole stake on that one runner. So select relative start time. We want it to run after this one's finished, so let's just put that to 1 second after the event time. And again, this really only needs to run for a couple of seconds. The action is going to be Dutching. Backing a Dutch, put your stake in, whatever it might be. I'll use my usual 100, but remember to change that should you want. We don't need to change the sorting because we are going to use the from the apply all rule option. So click on that, choose identify runners, which is the name given to this rule here. You might want to use keep just in case when the Dutch is placed one of those selections isn't fully matched, and you might want to keep it in play. And then conditions, you probably want to limit the book percentage. Excuse me. Put that less than, let's say 60%. That will then essentially stop any Dutching being placed if the profit from your potential Dutch, assuming that you let the thing run through to its conclusion, is less than a certain amount. The reason for doing that is the smaller the profit you have available on your Dutch, the longer the race has to run for you to be able to green up for a reasonable profit, assuming that you get to a position where you can green up. So we're going to look at the book percentage is less than 60 for the back price, and again we need to refer to the apply to all rule for that to work. You may also want to put in additional commands in there, like a condition that checks for the favourite being greater than a certain amount. In other words, you don't want to get involved in a race where the short price favourite is short odds on, for example. And that is it for the Dutching. Okay. The other option available to you is to just back a single runner. And this is where the small bets at 1.01 come in. So we'll back a single runner. And again, we'll set this to runs just after this first one has finished. The action that we want here, well, there's two. You can either place a BSP bet at that stage, or do what I've been doing manually in that original video and place a bet. And what we're going to do is choose our selection by the last bet. I'll explain that in a moment. We want to place a back bet, fix odds, we'll choose best back odds. And if you remember from the original video, I was asking for a little bit extra. So let's pump that up a couple of ticks. Fixed amount of 100, again adjust that how you like. And then we're going to take SP, which was what I was doing in the original video. So if the back bet isn't taken, I was just accepting SP. We need some conditions, however. We need to check that this thing here has only identified one runner. For that to be the case, there will be one bet at odds of 1.01, and that's what we need to check for. So we want to find the market bet count. We want to check that there is one bet, which is a lay bet. It's unmatched and its single odds are sitting at 1.01. Okay? So this condition here is going to check to see if there's an unmatched bet sitting at a lay bet sitting at 1.01. If that isn't true, this bet will not be submitted and the race will effectively be ignored. Again, you can put additional statements in here with regard to odds and so on and so forth, but this is the functionality that you need for this particular bet to work. Now keep in mind, although these two things could run concurrently, you shouldn't do that, because there'll be a situation where if there's only one runner, you'll end up getting a Dutch placed for £100, and then you'll also get another bet placed for £100. So you really want to disable one of those if you're going to be testing both of them over a period of time. And then finally, what we want to do is to pop in
10 seconds remaining.
Another rule that will simply green up. So again, let's set this to relative to start time. You could actually get this to go in play, and in all likelihood you'll need to go in play. But you might want to set it up to the same sort of times as these, so 3 seconds, let's say, after. The reason I'm saying that is, you may find that once your bet is placed, there may be a delay to the horse's loading or whatever, and you may find that your horse comes in price and you get the thing to green up before the actual off. So it's worthwhile doing. The action is green up all, and the conditions will be market green up all PL. You want that to be greater than, I was using £25 in my video, so we'll just go with that and click on OK. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is it. So let's actually assign this to some races. What I'll do is, I've actually got something else running at various courses today, but since Newcastle's on the all-weather and I'm not keen on the all-weather, we'll assign it to the races at Newcastle. Right, the eagle-eyed among you may have seen a couple of mistakes I've made. My timing's wrong on the Dutch selections. That should say after. And my timing's wrong on the back single runner. That should say after and after. I'll disable it again so we can test just the Dutching on its own. Sorry about that. Okay, we're coming up to the off on the 4:30 at Newcastle. Notice that I've disabled the back single runner rule, so we're just looking at a Dutch. Keep an eye on the back book price in case that'll tell you whether it's been accepted or not, whether it's below 60%. I suspect it might be below. Grand Descants may be a pick, although it's beginning to rise in odds again. Let's see how we get on. Right, there's been one selection. There we go. We've got 2 picks, as you can see from the 2 lay bets at 1.01. Favourite and 4-1 fever. So we've Dutched those 2 for an overall profit of £102, but of course we're going to trade out in running. So let's see how we get on during this race. As I mentioned earlier on, these bets will disappear once the race gets underway. Looks like there might be a little bit of a delay at Newcastle, so what I'll do is we'll just jump ahead.
This market is now in play.
On the other hand, perhaps we won't. So whilst I was busy chugging along, let me just go back to the strategy editor and we'll run through some of the settings that you might want to play around with. The first one, this is the important rule here. This is the one that detects whether a horse has come in down in price or not. We're looking to see if it's come down by 5 ticks. You may want to increase that. That's a relatively low movement, and I configured it like that so that we'd actually get some runners selected. You will find the higher you make that figure, the less likely it is that you will find a suitable race. So it's very much a balancing act that you've got to make. Other things that you might want to do here is put in conditions that check for odds. For example, you might not want to get involved in any runner that's odds on. You may not want to get involved in any runner that's high odds. That's particularly the case in that some high odds runners may well come in price by 5 ticks, but there won't be a huge amount of money that's driving that movement. So you may not want to get involved in any runners like that. With the Dutch selections, the book price, the book percentage I should say, is something that you might want to play around with. Again, keeping that too high would mean that you'd have less amount of overall profit to play with when it comes to greening up, and you'd almost inevitably have to wait to the end of the race. And there you can see we've just greened up for a nice profit of 40 odd pounds. Cool. So that worked very nicely indeed. So yes, as I was saying, you may want to play around with the book percentage as far as your Dutch is concerned. Okay, what we'll do is we'll go and move on to the next race, but this time I'll assign the back single runner option instead of Dutching. Okay, the 505 at Newcastle, we're testing the back single runner option now. Dutch selections is disabled. There may actually be 2 picks in this one, judging by the graphs looking at them at the moment. This normally for me wouldn't be a race to get involved in because of the top price favourite, but let's see how it goes as far as this demo is concerned. Right, just the one selection, so we should get a bet going in shortly. There we go. So the second favourite's been selected. That's its odds been taken before the off, so we don't take SP. We've got our odds that we wanted. It's a case of just letting it go in play now and seeing how we get on.
This market is now in play.
It's a 7 furlong race, so it shouldn't be long. Again, this is an all-weather track, so it wouldn't necessarily be a race I would get involved in. None of my strategies ever seem to work very well on all-weather. Certainly not consistently anyway, so I tend to stay clear of it, but for the purposes of demonstration, it lets you see the automation in action. So while that's turning away, quick recap. First rule is using the selection historical relative odds, and that's the thing that does the work in terms of identifying which runners have come in price. Now you can use exactly the same method to see which runners have drifted. Keep in mind, if that's something that you want to look at. Dutch selections, that can be used in a situation where you're likely to have more than one runner selected as coming in. Alternatively, you can just back a single runner, and that means that you can ignore all races where there's more than one runner selected. And then of course we've got our simple green up process. Okay, so that one wasn't successfully traded out. It doesn't surprise me, to be honest, given that there was a short price favourite. but it'll let you see the automation in action. So once again, thanks guys for watching, and I hope you found that interesting, and I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers!